Good evening, my dear televiewers. Once again, welcome to our weekly show, My Politics. This evening, we'll discuss about issue on leadership, issue on alternative job programs, and I'm happy to invite again our good friend, our guest, a business strategist, a philanthropist. Friends, my dear televiewers, help me welcome Dr. Brian Tu. Dr. Brian, good evening.
Good evening,
Once
Art.
again, welcome.
Good evening, Art, and thank you for your kind invitation and your courtesy. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Brian, it's my pleasure of being my guest here in my show. And thank you also very much for the positive reply of my humble invitation. Okay, Dr. Brian, let's discuss and let's have more discussion on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has had significant economic and labor market impacts worldwide, including, of course, the Philippines. The measure used to contain the spread of the virus have effectively shut down major sectors of the economy and had an immediate and sweeping impact on employment. Well, leadership issue is one of the key issues that has something to do with the post-pandemic, program and approach, what we're going to do with the displaced workers. I think you have a lot of experience, you have a huge knowledge on how to deal about this kind of situation.
Thank you, Art. That really is the question of the decade. In fact, not just the question of 2019 to
Okay.
2021.
Okay.
And it's clear that, and I'm sure you'll agree, that it's very clear that the pandemic has brought about and highlighted the gaps in leadership, very much so, at all levels, at the corporate sector, the government, absolutely everywhere, even in healthcare. The gaps in leadership are very, very clear.
Okay.
And it's a result, essentially, and we understand that nobody or very few would have predicted, which, as I mentioned last time I came to visit you.
Yes.
But the reality is, it's the absence of planning, the absence of strategy, the absence of leadership, and no planning, absolutely no planning whatsoever. That the gaps now are serious, and we will, in fact, end up paying a very hefty price for this.
Okay. Yeah. Doc Brian, are we in the right direction in addressing this particular problem? Well, an issue on leadership again.
Well, it calls for a very unique style of leadership, which is quite often referred to as adaptive leadership.
Okay.
And we can go country to country, we could do comparative analysis, but what we do know is that the gaps specifically in those areas, the obvious, of course, is healthcare, education, and employment.
Okay.
In these areas, we fail miserably.
Okay.
Not just the Philippines, but it's no different in many parts of the Western world.
Okay.
But we're really not fighting this the way we should be fighting. It's a war.
Okay.
Our conversation shouldn't just be restricted to the West Philippine Sea. It's pandemics also. Because following this, who knows with all the variants, but is it going to be black mold? Is it going to be yellow mold? Is it going to be dengue? And what are the implications when you combine these? Of course, I'm not a medical doctor, but the experts out there will advise us.
Okay.
When you start to combine some of these very difficult strains and viruses, we don't know what the outcome could be. It could be worse worse than the plague. We don't yet know.
I see.
But it varies, of course, from country to country.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Brian, you made mention about adaptive leadership. What is really this adaptive leadership style?
Adaptive leadership essentially means our leadership style has to be flexible enough to engage whatever situation.
Okay.
Whether it be internal strife, it could be economics, it could be war, it could be conflict, it could be crisis, but essentially it's crisis management also.
Okay.
And we're not prepared for crisis management here. We're not prepared. Everything we do is reactive, it's not planned. We don't prepare for calamities, catastrophes very well. Even with the economy, I mean, how many loans do we need to get? I mentioned on my last video, how many loans do we need to get for the vaccines? How many loans? It's loan after loan after loan after loan after loan. And the corporates also, a lot of the corporates, perpetual loans at the banks.
Okay.
But what happens if the banks start to default? Have we thought about that?
But what is really an adapted leadership? In a leadership which has a leadership framework.
In the leadership framework, Art, it basically means we engage the unknown in a very responsive way, not a reactive way.
So we are expecting a gradual but a meaningful process of change. Is that expected in this kind of leadership?
In a mature environment, in a mature economy, we would expect that.
Okay.
We would in fact respond, not react. Our style of leadership has been reactive.
Okay. And how would you become? And how would you, become an adaptive leader?
Well, it requires coaching. It requires education. It requires mentorship, and requires an innate understanding of the different forms and styles of leadership.
Okay.
It's not one style of leadership meets all the needs of what happens to us in any country.
Okay. So expectedly, what are the challenges of having or this kind of adaptive leadership?
Yes, that's a wonderful question. It's really the barriers to adopting an adaptive style of leadership essentially is ego,
Okay.
arrogance, narcissism, and essentially sticking to one style of leadership, which may have worked in favorable times, but will not work in times of conflict, will not work in times of despair as we have now.
I see. Let's put this way in this context, Dr. Brian. If I am a leader, adaptability is a key or is a skill needed not only to survive but likewise to thrive.
Well, to manage.
Or to manage. Okay.
I mean, you are a good example. I mean, everybody knows, and even I know, as a guest of your country, that your concern for community and for development, and particularly at the local level, is very well known.
Okay.
You are practicing leadership. You listen. Most narcissistic leaders do not listen. You interpret. You're an adaptive leader already. You're a good example. In fact, I suggest you run for politics.
Thank you for that, Dr. Brian. Maybe not now. Yes, Dr. Brian. Flexibility is one of the skills.
Yes.
Okay. Adaptive way of thinking, something like that, or create an environment of psychological safety practice and emotional agility.
Yes. You describe it better than I could describe.
No.
Thank you, Professor Art.
I'm just reviewing your documents. I'm just reviewing some of your printed materials, which you have a lot.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That you gave me, and you have it reproduced and give it to your seminar participants.
Yes, correct.
Some years back at one of the big hotels here. Yeah, I attended that.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for that invitation also.
Thank you for joining. Without you, there is no audience.
Yeah. What was that particular program, you have a very good title, a very catchy one.
Yes, it was called SLAMP.
Yes, slump.
Slump.
Yes, slump.
It's
So that's
strategy
first
and-
slump.
SLAMP.
Yeah.
There's been three:
Uh-huh.
strategy and leadership.
Okay.
Of course. 'Cause
Okay.
There's an intersection between those two. When you think about strategy, you have to think about leadership. And when you think about leadership, you have to think about strategy. The problem we have is that many corporate government leaders, they think they have an idea about leadership, but actually have no clue. So they just operate. Well, this is what got me to where I am, so this must be leadership.
Yeah, that is what lacking in our government, Dr. Brian. If you say so, well, you are a guest here, but just as a personal observation.
My observation is that the potential exists, but we're very weak here in terms of education at a high level, at a higher level.
Okay.
Very, very weak. I mean, for example, when you think about research in business, for example, and behavioral sciences such as
Right.
leadership,
Yeah,
when we
yeah.
think of management schools and
Yeah.
we think of leadership schools,
Yep.
first of all, there are a few.
Uh-huh.
And the Philippines, in the entire country, if you take a look at the leading university, which so that we don't argue, we would say today is probably UP.
Yeah.
Okay, UP Diliman. We probably produce maybe less than 3 PhDs in this field
Uh-huh.
per year.
Okay.
Okay,
I see.
other countries
Uh-huh.
prioritize leadership, but in fact we don't. So
see.
the leadership emerges, but emerges from what?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Is it because it's idolization? We idolize people here. We idolize politicians. So we think that because maybe they were this, maybe they were that, so we think
Yeah.
they're great leaders.
Right,
We
right.
idolize.
Right. Yes, that's it. And well, I hope that our government will listen to you and will offer your expertise immediately after election, or those in the corporate ladders, those in the government, or those government executives or career executives of the government will continue taking this program. We have a special institutions in government. We call it Development Academy of the Philippines, DAP. And it's intended for those in the career service or executive officials of the local government units. But I don't know if they are taking it seriously of harnessing or capitalizing the government-sponsored institution.
There are, in fact, some institutions within the country that do study leadership and management and the intersection between leadership and productivity.
Okay.
There are some.
Okay.
But you have to take a look at who's teaching those programs. Are we talking about theory-based professors, or are we talking about practice-based professors? Are they coming from the field, from the war zone, or are they coming from a very comfy office with a window?
Okay.
Okay. So we have to look at that. And we have to study what are the needs of the future, because it's all about the future, Art. It's about preparing the next generation to assume greater leadership responsibility.
Yes, exactly.
It's not about edifying ourselves.
Exactly.
You know, it's not about corruption leadership. It's about, or it's legacy leadership.
Yes, yes.
Or, it's about, the kind of what we call noble house leadership, which is my grandfather was in politics, my uncle was in politics. It's about really how best can we serve the community? It's not about us.
Right.
It's about the community.
Right. Yes. So we'll have more discussion on this particular topic, my dear viewers, with our guest, Dr. Brian Tu, a business strategist turning into philanthropist and an expert on the issue of leadership. After these reminders, don't go away. Once again, good evening, my dear televiewers. Welcome back to our weekly show, My Politics. This is your host, Art Abarit. My guest this evening is Dr. Brian Tu. Doc Bry, the post-pandemic plan as far as leadership is concerned, okay, we know for a fact that large and small to medium enterprises in the country are seeking to improve their customer services and digitalization for post-pandemic success. So, well, in your experience, what we're going to do with the post-pandemic plan as far as leadership issue is concerned?
Thank you for that question, Art. Post-pandemic strategy is in itself the study of post-trauma.
Okay.
Post-trauma, as we need to deal with the mental health issues, we need to deal with the gaps in our infrastructure.
Okay.
Again, in healthcare and also in education.
Okay.
I mean, think about these students, the next generation of leadership. These students have been sitting at home in their kitchens. Some have good Wi-Fi, many don't have Wi-Fi. Many of them are studying out of modules, out of recycled paper. Their education system we have to reconsider how we're going to deliver education in the future.
Okay.
But in terms of what the corporates are doing, they're getting ready. Many are getting ready. Why? Because they've lost customers, they've lost suppliers.
Right.
Their brand is lost in the foray.
Right.
Okay. And so we have to ask the question: how can we increase the emotional investment in our brand and in our companies post-pandemic? And there's some interesting companies that are out there that are doing that. They're asking the right questions. Where do we go? When it eventually, hopefully, goes away, we don't know when. At that point, what do we do? And many of these companies have actually lost their business.
Exactly.
Where do we go from here? But you're one of the few who's asking that question. Of course, the corporates, because we're talking about corporate survival. They're asking the question.
Right.
So the first place to begin, of course, is to really assess what are the remnants. What is left? What is the situation? What is not just the situation with our community of employees, of members, but what is the remnants of our customer base? I mean, if everybody just calls Lazada,
right.
or Shopee, then that's what it is. But you have to go way beyond that. The utility firms, the power companies, the telephone companies need to think very carefully. Even the BPOs, and Cebu has many BPOs, as you know better than I. What are you going to do? What are we going to do? Because we have to retain. We have to retain the business. We have to retain employees. And we have to retain customers.
Okay.
And then, of course, we have to retain our shareholders.
Yes.
Mostly what you see is, you have a whole series of excuses. We're not going to do this. We can't decide any of this. We can't do anything because of the COVID. But what happened when the COVID does go away? Do you know what to do? Do you have a plan? Are you prepared? Okay. And the reality is most organizations, not that I've surveyed all, but the ones that I've communicated well with, are not prepared. They have no clue. They're still trying to get the vaccine. And then there's a dispute. Which vaccine? You take this one, you can't do this. You go this one, you can't do that, and so on and so on. We're still fighting over vaccines.
In short, Dr. Brian, it's more of reactionary.
It's reaction, as I mentioned. And maturity and adaptive leadership is preparation. We're prepared, and we are not prepared. And that's very obvious. All you have to do is read the daily newspaper, watch the daily television, and you know the situation. You don't need to be some rocket genius to know.
Okay. Now, one of the interventions of the government is to have a stimulus package. And one of the pillars is really actually helping the economy revive. And a big amount of money is also being planned or included in that particular intervention for the small and medium enterprises in the country.
That's true. But it's not just a matter of, let's have a distribution of some funds. You're going to have distribution of funds when the election comes around next year.
Exactly, yes.
You're going
I think that's for election purposes.
I mean, the numbers change, Art. I mean, respectfully, the numbers will change. It's 500 pesos, then it'll be 1,000 pesos, and then 2,000 pesos, depending where you are. Because we don't even teach our community what to do with those funds.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay. Okay.
We need to educate. And there has to be leadership, really solid leadership that really says, we're going to teach you. Okay? But how to teach? We borrow, we sell our jewelry, we're very good at this, we're very good at the Yutang, but where's it going? Where's it going? And the same with the government. The government says, oh, we borrow money, we're within range, nothing to worry about, nothing. We're B-rated credit and so on and so forth. What does it mean? Do we know how to create jobs? And this is why we need to discuss what are the alternate job opportunities. Because at this point, what a wonderful opportunity. I think in Bisaya you call it sayang. And what the sayang is, in my mind, is we should be using this time of COVID to develop, to nurture, to re-engineer, to refocus, reposition, re-strategize, refocus the next generation.
Yes.
We should be putting these young people to work in internships.
That should have been.
It should
What
have
is
been.
the government now doing on this time of the pandemic?
Exactly. We should be productive.
Yes.
Not making excuses.
Yes, exactly. Okay. And there was a study made some years back by the World Bank on the countries here in Southeast Asia, Dr. Brian. And the study was titled Digital Resilient and Experience-Driven: How Enterprises in Southeast Asia Can Prepare for the Economy. And it revealed in that particular study that the main strategies of enterprises in Southeast Asia to prepare for post-pandemic days. So with that, I think, you made mention that we are not yet prepared. We are not yet ready. And there are a lot of opportunities that were lost, supposedly, during this pandemic, that should have been the focus of the government or the frontline government agencies. Not just giving the dole-outs and the financial assistance to the marginalized sector, but likewise teaching them, educating them, and guiding some of the best practices that they could offer.
That's correct. It goes back to the national agenda, which is set by, of course, the powers throughout the country, the powers in Manila, and so forth. But the reality is we are not prepared. We need to strategize, as I mentioned earlier, re-strategize and reposition with a new Philippines, new Philippines with a new agenda.
Okay.
Not just same old, because nothing's going to change.
Yes.
We'll go through another election. We'll move a few policies around. We'll let some people in. We'll let a few people do this. There'll be money politics again. But where are we going? Are we any further ahead? We're no further ahead as a country, unfortunately. But the potential, as I mentioned in my last visit, the potential is right here in the Philippines. It's right here. Give or take, let's not argue, 110 million people. What are you going to do with this magic workforce? And then you compare. You're forced to compare. One shouldn't compare, but we're forced to compare in ASEAN. We take a look at what they're doing, for example, in Vietnam. Very interesting what they're doing in Vietnam to develop the young. They're energetic, entrepreneurial, not so dependent on the government, focused on education. And that's what we should be focused on education. We can't do anything with an uneducated workforce. You don't need to go to school to figure that out.
Exactly.
We need to educate ourselves. We need to change the paradigms that we have in our minds, okay? There will not be a messiah for the corporate sector.
Oh, yes.
There will not be.
Yeah.
Okay.
The problem also here, Dr. Brian, is we produce a lot of graduates who are mostly also mismatched when it comes to the kind of work that they are entering into as new labor entrants immediately after graduating from the universities and colleges. And a lot of our institutions are offering oversubscribed courses, so to speak. So that's the reason why, and I'm happy to note that the Commission on Higher Education are already allocating some of the courses to the different universities, unlike before, that even if you have oversubscribed courses, the universities and colleges just offer it even without, acceptance, or even without a place where there would be, or the graduates can enter into after college or after graduating from their institutions or from their universities.
Well, it all begins with the need for a paradigm shift. And we, the community, are responsible. Our thinking is send your children, your offspring, your loved ones to college and become a nurse or something like that, and then go offshore.
Yeah.
Go be an OFW.
Right.
Okay, and then send money. Send money. It's not a solution. The investment that you've made, that talent should stay here in the country.
Yes. Should flow back to the country.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you know, they're so valued. They're so valued in some countries that they're so dependent on OFW.
Yes,
and they do
exactly.
so well. I mean, if you take a look at the state of California, for example, if you look at nurses in California, one in the South, 2 out of every 3 are from the Philippines. If you look at the UK, if you look at the Middle East, wherever you go,
Right.
and that is overspilled now into technology.
Exactly,
We
yes.
have the technology talent here,
Yes.
but they don't stay here. Okay, so who's staying?
Only the mismatch. You know, our economy is insulated not because of the foreign direct investment or the investment portfolio that increases every year. The economy of this country is insulated because of the continuous money placement of our OFWs.
Right,
Okay. So that's the reason why it seems that the government is the biggest manpower recruiter when it comes to overseas Filipino workers,
Yes,
or overseas workers.
Because the leadership,
Dr. Brian.
yes, correct. The leadership build empires. So you have empires within the government.
Yes.
When you take a look at productivity and you take a look at effectiveness in terms of leadership and these different ratios, you'll see that they actually have built legacies. Okay, but then another comes election and it all changes again. But basically, the style is the same. Okay,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
cannot eliminate corruption until there's a penalty for corruption,
Right.
a serious penalty, and that's how they did it in China. Okay?
Yeah, yeah.
You think about the last few weeks. In the Guangdong province alone, 3 million were tested in just a couple of weeks. 3 million. We're still fighting over which vaccine, where's the money coming from, who gets priority. And of course, I'm not criticizing the system. You know, I understand A1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I understand.
right,
We all
right,
understand that.
Right, right.
But we have numbers, so you have to have strategy when you have numbers.
Right,
110 million. Think
Oh
about
my-
it. It's
oh my
serious.
God.
It's serious.
It's very, very, yeah, indeed. Yes, it's very, very
Because we
serious.
could get wiped out. Never mind all these ships from China sitting in the Philippine Sea,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is another concern
Right.
I have, of course, is what is the real strategy?
Yeah, as I've said earlier, Dr. Brian, during this pandemic, during this health crisis, the government should have been supposedly guiding the citizens or the youth of having a productive months during this pandemic. And well, I see it as one of the positive results of this pandemic, Dr. Brian, is the home and internet-based jobs, which have a lot here. And I think this is a virtual careers that also have to be learned and taken into by a lot of the displaced workers as a result of the pandemic. Well, we have more discussion on that, my dear televiewers, after these reminders with our guest, Dr. Brian To. Don't go away. Once again, my dear televiewers, welcome back to our weekly show, My Politics. This is your host, Art Barrett. Our guest this evening is our good friend, a philanthropist, Dr. Brian To. Okay, Dr. Brian, you made mention about strengthening or dispersing the economy in the rural areas. I mean, the agriculture economy in the rural areas, okay? Especially addressing poverty and unemployment problems also in the countryside.
That's correct, Art. Thank you. When you go around the countryside, I mean, not that I've been throughout the whole country, but I've been to enough towns and village and barangays to see that when you listen carefully to their needs, they need infrastructure. They need those roads to get to all these places.
Exactly.
They need technology. They need farm equipment. Okay. And they need the science. The science is being the schools to develop these agricultural candidates, these farmers, and so on and so forth.
Agree.
But not only that, what a wonderful country in which to implement manufacturing in the countryside. We should learn from these other countries in ASEAN also that might have similar terrain to look at what industries we can create. And not just the usual mining and, we've heard it all before. Okay. What light industries, green industries we can implement. And that requires leadership. Because it's the same thing. Now you have people in the country moving into the city even just to get a vaccine. Right? And then I move into the city I take a helper job. But where's the bridge? The bridge has to be education, there has to be coaching, there has to be leadership. And these are the keys.
I agree, Dr. Brian, that vibrant agriculture is key to faster recovery and poverty reduction.
Right.
But, one of the hindrances of our agriculture sector is you have farm inputs and implements which are very, very high. Okay? So, well, if I am a marginalized farmer, I won't continue tilling my land because I could no longer afford my farm inputs and implements. So that's one. I think what is needed here, if you may agree with me, is just support coming from the government.
Well, the support has to come and the leadership has to come from the government.
Yeah.
And not just the infrastructure, but also the motivation. Because you're right. In current conditions, how can you sustain this kind of a strategy?
Exactly, yeah.
You cannot sustain. Okay? And this should be on the tips of everybody's lips and of their brains. What should we be doing to create employment in the rural areas of the country?
Yes.
And then how are we going to maintain our position within ASEAN? And not just the security position, of which I've yet to hear an appropriate strategy. Okay?
Oh, yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So what we need to do is really be humble and think carefully about what the questions are. But how can you be in search of any of these answers if you don't even know the questions, Art?
Exactly, yes.
You don't even know the questions. A lot of these leaders don't even know the basic questions. How can they be in search of the answers for the country?
Yes, yes.
So my fear is we'll go through yet another round of elections and the potential that untapped wealth of knowledge and resources I referred to in my last visit will again be lost. And more of the next generation will want to leave the country rather than stay in the country. And it'll be money politics all over again. I mean, you see it now. The season has started, hasn't it?
Exactly,
The season has started and everybody's jockeying. Who do I partner with? In other words, in simple English, who do I run with? And it's not going to change.
Yeah.
Who do I run with? It's all political.
Yeah.
It's this idolization again. It's not about idolization. If you really want to secure a position in public service, ask yourself the question, what is your platform? And you want to know the platform, what is your strategy? They might have a platform of this and that, but no strategy.
Right.
Okay? Because everybody thinks they're a strategist.
Yes, right.
They don't recognize that the rest of us have to go to college
Yes.
for 12 years
Right.
or 20 years
You're
to
right.
study this. What is the strategy? And so, to your viewers, you have to have a strategy. During these times, you have to have a strategy for your family. You have a strategy for yourself.
Right.
Because your industry could get wiped out. Your organization could get wiped out very quickly.
Right.
You have to have a strategy for your community. And you have to have a strategy for your, obviously, the country.
Yes. Yeah, you know, Doc Brian, this country, we have the best agriculture and fishery law that was passed some years back.
Yes.
The problem here is on the implementation aspect. In one of my interviews here with an official of the Department of Agriculture, I made mention to my guest that, well, the post-harvest facility is always lacking when it comes to the farmers in the countryside. You have the best farm to market roads, or if I say so, farm to pocket roads. Well, that's a joke. So, but the post-harvest facility, where produce coming from farms, when the market is already saturated with a lot of vegetables, with a lot of farm products, at least the farmers could, after the harvest, could deposit in that post-harvest facility in order not to disrupt the pricing of the farm products in the market.
Correct. It's time to market.
Exactly.
What is that period of manufacturing ready for the market, and how long does it take to get to the market?
Yes,
You know,
that's
there's a wonderful example of that with not only just poultry, but also with pigs. Okay? We have phenomenal of pig manufacturing, I mean, growing pigs, essentially, piggeries in Mindanao.
Yeah.
But then we ship a lot of those pigs offshore.
Yes.
They go offshore. They primarily go to Luzon, essentially, and to some to Cebu. And these are industries that we used to control. And now the foreign companies are coming in because they see where the country is weak. They process and create finished product.
Right.
Why can't we do that here in this country? Why? Because we don't invest. We don't invest at all.
Yes.
Technology,
But
with the
mostly,
infrastructure.
there are some good investors, but well, it's being controlled by middlemen or middle managers. So,
Yes.
a lot of my friends, they can control and they can dictate
Yes.
prices in the market.
Yes.
Yeah.
No different than fishing. Okay, fishing is very competitive.
Right.
But if you take a look at how many Filipino families are dependent on fishing for a livelihood, what's happening in the country is it's when you take a look, it's dismal actually.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Very
Yeah.
dismal.
Yeah.
Fishing, poultry, piggeries, these are areas and industries we should be investing in, actually finished product. We should be investing in.
Yeah. If in your opinion, Dr. Brian, how to transform the country's agriculture into a dynamic, high-growth sector, essential for the country's to speed up a recovery?
You have to have the right infrastructure,
That's
the
one.
right logistics,
Okay.
the right markets. Who's dying for pigs, for pork meat? China. But we have all of these laws and we don't comply with shipping and standards and quality. We need to engage China for pork,
Oh, yeah.
okay?
Okay.
And we need to do more in these other countries where, like for example, in poultry.
Okay.
Where should poultry go? Where is the demand for poultry? Singapore, Malaysia. Understand the markets, but we don't even study. What we do is we shortcut. Respectfully, I say all of these things I've said today are entirely respectful. But you cannot have a respectful conversation unless you're honest about it.
Yes,
If
exactly.
it's not honest, it's not respectful.
I agree.
Because I'm not here to sip you or sip the country. Okay, I'm not here to cheese miss either. You've got to know where these markets are. You've got to then engage those markets.
Yes.
China needs pigs.
Yes.
Malaysia needs chicken. What's the problem? Japan needs fish.
Right.
Europe needs fish. We have all of these here.
It's all here.
It's all here.
Yeah, okay. Now, how to entice our youth to go back into farming? Is it to reorient or refocus our focus of agriculture education or extension services or whatever?
Of course, we have to provide the right incentives. We should have many scholarships. And we have to make the economics correct. But you can convince, if you convince the new leadership, this new generation X, if you teach them strategy, everything comes back to strategy, Art. No strategy, no conversation. Because they say, well, how? What? What's next? What do we do? Where do I begin? What do I do? No strategy. Because how many strategists in the country? Very few.
Very few.
Very few.
Yes, exactly. Very few.
So you have to engage a conversation about strategy. What is the strategy for healthcare? What is the strategy for education? What is it for agriculture? How about employment? What is the strategy? And I can assure you, if we interview many of the leadership, they don't have an answer because they don't even know what strategy is. They themselves don't know what it is.
Now, how to improve management skills for the young farmers?
Well, let me tell you what they do in other countries. That might help with the benchmark. Leadership, first of all, is a requirement. Leadership education is a requirement in other countries.
Yes.
It's mandatory in China. It's mandatory in Singapore, and mandatory also in Malaysia. Also, but for the newer generation, you study Vietnam. Very nice. What the research and the work and the practices and the education. Very. Thailand is another one. Very nice. But here we don't encourage our young to continue their studies. Oh, you have an undergraduate degree. But respectfully, undergraduate degree from the Philippines might be considered high school in another country. So how to compete?
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because you've got this black cloud.
Yes.
That we live with every day, and it's called competition, and we forget that. We're not just competing with ourselves; we're competing with all these other countries that are also highly motivated.
Right. So there is a need to reorient.
Yes. So what do we do?
On the focus of agriculture education, something like that.
We need to re-engineer. Re-engineer the whole country would be nice. Whoever comes up with that plan is going to be the next king. In other words, the next president.
The next president.
The next president.
Okay, actually, Dr. Brian, one of the approaches when it comes to dispersal of the economy in the countryside, focusing on agriculture, in my opinion, is to give incentives.
Yes.
But we are not giving incentives to those manufacturers or to those firms trying to set up or establish their businesses in the countryside.
No, that's right. But that's why incentives have to be performance-based.
Okay.
There has to be some accountability.
Okay.
The magic is performance-based. No different.
Okay.
If you're in public leadership and no performance, just more talking,
okay.
you get to lose. You
I
lose
see.
your portfolio.
I see.
There has to be a consequence. No consequence, no accountability, no results.
Okay. It's a very good suggestion, a very good opinion coming from our guest this evening, my dear Tulubers. Okay, Doc Brian, our parting statement and your 1 minute statement also prior to your parting statement to our televiewers this evening.
Well, it comes back to what I mentioned a few minutes ago, which is very simply this. You strategize or you die. Die in terms of not literally die, but you will lose the market, you will cease to be competitive, You have to have a strategy for yourself, your career, your business, your country, your community, your barangay. Strategize or you will die.
Thank you very much, Doc Brian, too. Our guest this evening, my televiewers. And thank you for your second guesting of my program.
Thank you all.
Indeed, my pleasure.
Thank you.
This is your host, Art Barrett, manamilit lagmingon, nga samtang uhingos pang ilong sa tao, yung mga pangandoy ug pingusbawan na, huway katapusan. Daghang salamat, good evening, bye-bye.